Low quality fans of a high quality Bruins team, welcome back. The roster is set. It is. It's genuinely set. Barring any major changes, such as a four-board trade, we don't have the cap to add anymore, but can ice a full roster. Good stuff. I guess technically that was true previously as well. But this humble little video, we're just going to chat about how this all shakes out. And honestly, the first thing I want to mention is to like, comment, subscribe. Nailed it. No, the first thing I want to mention is the arbitration and almost arbitration of Swayman and Freddie in that order. Swayman, 3.475. I was off by $75,000 on my prediction a month and a half ago. I feel pretty good about it. Anyone taking a victory lap after their prediction was said after both sides put in for their, like, hey, the Bruins put in for $2 million, Sway put in for like 4.9, and they land directly in the middle. That's cheating because they always land directly in the middle. I mean, I feel like arbitration has gotten to that point where it's just useless because we always just boop. So, I don't know. And then Freddie, the 2.3, my prediction was 2.2. So I actually feel, I'm kind of feeling myself right now. Just a little bit. Sometimes you gotta. Also, if you haven't seen it, I posted it like 10 days ago, but there was a little tribute to Bergeron, just a minute and a half, that I'm pretty proud with how it turned out. So if you wouldn't mind checking that out, if you would mind, don't do it. You're an individual. You do whatever you want to do. I believe in you. You'll make the right choice. Now, I did want to talk about this goaltending situation that a lot of people it's just discourse about it. If you're on the Discord and you've seen me talk a little bit about this, it's not a situation. It's not a concern. Not right now. Now, Swayman got 1 year, and he's an RFA at the end of this season once again. He's going to get, if he shows out with another 920 plus save percentage, he's going to get a real long-term deal, whether it be from us or someone else. If someone else does it, they're going to pay through the offer sheet system, which will be at least a first-round pick plus some. I'm not concerned for a couple of reasons. First of all, we're not going to fix the center issue this year. It's not going to happen. And whether you see that as punting on a year or not, that's your prerogative, but we are not going to fix that this year. Maybe something happens at the trade deadline, but I really doubt it. What that means is this season, we're leaning on three strengths. Pasternak, by himself, is basically a strength. Our defensive depth. Depth. Our top four is nutty, though. Grizz, Mac, Lindholm, Carlo is just so good. And goaltending. Ullmark and Swayman. And being able to split those starts up. That's what we have to lean on. Signing Swayman, I would have preferred 2 years. I don't think he would have. I don't know why the team went with 1 year. Because I believe he would have been an RFA even if we went to 2 years. But, at the end of the day, that's one of our major strengths to lean on. So this whole discourse about, well, one of them has to get moved, they don't actually, especially not this year. Next season, maybe, but then you're still in a good scenario where, okay, if both of these guys have decent seasons, each have value. Now, goalies aren't traded with high value the way other players are. You simply don't get the same level of assets back for a goaltender. I've been saying this for years. You don't get the same level of assets back as you would for a top flight winger, a top flight center, defenseman, whatever, because goaltending's such voodoo. But either way, the value is there. So this really angsty discourse about where the Bruins are and how they're handling the goalie situation, I don't understand it. Is it a tricky spot to be in? Absolutely. Is it a bad spot to be in? Not really. I'd rather have two very good goalies in or about to hit their prime than have zero. We'll figure out the money stuff. And whether that means keeping them both or shipping one off next year, both of those are an option still. It's just not a concern, I guess, is what I'm getting at. Will it become a concern when we're re-signing Swayman? Sure, but it's not like he gets to just run off and test free agency. He's an RFA, a restricted free agent. It's not a situation that is gonna have a lot of difficulty to it, in my opinion. If you go to arbitration and he gets a big deal again, you work with that, and we can work with that. especially if there's not a lot of UFA centermen available next year. I just feel like there's a lot of people really concerned about something that shouldn't be a concern for a year, and even then, it's not that bad. It's not that bad. Cap Friendly has been so fun to use that I'm just going to jump in with them again. And what we're going to go over is how this roster actually fills out. On the left side, you have Marchand, a big question mark, JVR, and Milan Lucic, and then you have some guys below, like Lauko. I'm leaving that second line left wing open, because although I believe the Bruins will try Van Riemsdyk there, I don't believe he has sticking power in the top 6 anymore. I think he's best used on the third line. So we'll just, find a top 6 winger. Easy, Right side, we kind of have what we need, unless you're going to move DeBrusk over. You have Pasta, you have DeBrusk, Freddie, we're going to talk about in a minute. And then you've got a couple options. You have Boquist, Brown, Greer, Steen, a lot of stuff. I am assuming it's Boquist because you don't want him at the dot because he's terrible at the dot. But he is an effective bottom 6 guy with some upside. I think that's a fine spot for him now. The reason Frederick's on the right side and not part of the center depth is because Morgan Geekie's interviews have frequently been based around an expansion of his role. He's going to be used in the top 9. He's not going to be used on the fourth line. But although I believe if Freddie was the center for a fourth line, he'd run a very effective line, he is going to be... How do I put this? Trent Frederick would run an effective fourth line. But in the same way that Geekie deserves an expanded role, Frederick does as well. And although he's not going to be used in the faceoff dot in the top 9 just because he is not better than any of the other 3 that are listed currently, he is going to need more ice time. You want to see if he can continue his upward trajectory. And burying him on the fourth line with some players who are not effectively going to create offense, Lucic comes to mind if he's playing. I don't want to see him run that fourth line. I'd rather give the opportunity to a younger player, or we just kind of have this total shutdown presence on the fourth and don't worry about scoring goals too often with them. A dangerous tactic, but you see it every now and again. So I'm going to leave Frederick on that right side. And of course, down the middle, you have Coyle, Zacha, Geekie, and then a question mark there. Defensively, I think this is pretty easy. You're probably going with the Grizz McAvoy pairing again and the Lindholm-Carlo pairings. Those have been very good pairings in the past for us. Forbort, you're looking to bury as much cap as possible, so you'll chuck him down, not on the wing. There we go. And then you're going to see if Lohrei makes a push out of camp. I think a Lohrei-Shattenkirk third pair is very possible outside of camp. Either way, maybe you go with a Zaboral look, and Mitchell's down here as well. What that does is it actually frees up some cap space because you're carrying less players as you go through. That's probably nothing because you're still at 1.4. We got to fill some stuff up here. So it's really just allowing us to fill in the players we want up here. And then lastly, of course, you have Ullmark and Swayman, 8.475 to goaltending, which right now feels a little high, but if Swayman's deal stays under 5, I think in the future cap settings, 10 to 11 million on goaltending is not crazy. But again, that depends on a lot of different factors. So let's fill some holes! Hole filled. This is a biased take. This is a take that I want to come to fruition so badly. If he has a great camp, he's your first look on that left side. Would they consider this? Probably. They probably do that first. But I think it's butt cheeks, and we're going to run with Merkulov on the top 6. That being said, there is another option. We're going to swap DeBrusk over to his natural left side, which will be kind of hard after a couple of years of mostly playing right. And then if Liesel has a huge camp, there we go. That is a much more likely scenario than Merck being up there. But what I'm focusing on here is I don't need to force Frederick into the top 6, obviously, nor does anyone want that. But I want to prevent JVR from being in our top 6 because I do not believe he's going to be effective in that role. Whereas I feel like a Liesel type or a Merck type would be more effective if they can make that next leap. A lot of ifs, but I really don't think Van Riemsdyk has staying power in the top 6. As for your fourth center role. Can't have Boquist because he's just terrible on the dot. Just terrible. Don't want to use Frederick because he deserves to be in the top 9, and let's see how he can work with Geeky. The smartest choice to me is your Beecher. To me, it makes sense. Really good in the dot, really good defensively, has no offensive upside. These 3 together, they are simply a shutdown line. What makes a lot more sense, though, and what I think would be the smartest options, is you bring Lauko up. That leaves a little to be desired defensively, but Beecher's very good defensively. Boquist okay. And that line has a little more scoring opportunity because of Lauko's speed. This kind of lineup, although you're pushing Lucic out, Merck's out, Greer's out, Brown I don't think any of us care about, that's a competitive lineup everywhere but down the middle. Honestly, the best thing about a lineup like this is you are not solely relying on young guys, but you're still allowing them to get in the lineup. Your Laukos, your Beechers, your Liesels are getting a chance. Whereas we could very easily just do that, hope Boquist improves in the center, and go Greer, and then, I don't know, you drop him out, and ba-ba, and I guess you would push Lauko up. And so Lauko, Greer's not a young guy, but Lauko's the only youth you have on the team that's really making a push. Guys that you actually had in your system. And these guys are just still pushed out. Now, obviously, you're waiting for them to have a camp. You're not going to give a young guy a role just to give him a role. But if there was a year that the Bruins were okay taking a chance on a guy, this should be it, right? Let's be honest. We're not going to be a contender status this year. If anything, best case scenario, dark horse. Get into the playoffs and then see where it goes from there. But I don't see us being a firm contender without at least one higher end center on the team. And I like Zacha. Do I believe he's a championship level 2C? Not really, honestly. It would have to be mitigated by a true top flight 1C, and we just don't have that. Coyle doesn't belong in the top 6, in my opinion, at all, but that's a whole different conversation. Defensively, there's just not much to talk about. Your Lorei versus Zaboral battle is there. How far can Lorei push himself up? Can you have a lineup like this, where Lorei goes all the way to the top pair? Probably not, but there's going to be a battle. And to be fully transparent, every conversation I've had with someone who's close to the team, which, remember, I'm not an insider and I'm not talking to people who are making decisions, but when I do speak to people who are in the building, it feels like Lorei and Liesel are going to be given every opportunity to make the team. McLaughlin, too, who I've kind of left out of this because it just doesn't make sense to me. It just doesn't. But that 4C role is up for grabs, and they are looking at McLaughlin as one of those options. If he has a good camp, you'll see him get the first start there, but Beecher isn't far behind. What I think it's going to be when opening night comes around is what we had just a little bit earlier. I think Liesel is going to be given his chance. I think they like Greer on the fourth line, but they'd rather have the Boquist. I think Beecher's going to have a good enough defensive camp to show up. And you've got a couple guys who are on the outside looking in. Defensively, I think it's much, much, much more likely you get something along these lines. That's pretty much it. Now, a question I've been getting a lot is, will any young guys unexpectedly make the team? And I think it depends on your expectations. Liesel, Lorei, Merkulov all have routes to make it in. But there is really one available spot in the top 9. So only one of Liesel and Merck can make it, and Liesel's got the inside track on that. Lorei, it just feels like his competition isn't as stiff. That third pair, Forbort, Shattenkirk, Zaboral, and then name a bunch of other guys, it feels like he has the best opportunity to come into camp and be good enough that they go, all right, you're still a better option, even if he's not peak powers, which obviously he won't be yet. There's still growth to go. Beecher, McLaughlin, Honestly, neither of them are probably in the lineup game one, but Beecher, I think, has the best opportunity to do so, even though he doesn't have the inside track, because of his skill set is so clearly labeled for a 4C. I mean, he's just really good defensively, really good from the dot. He's a guy you can start in the defensive zone every single shift and feel pretty good about your chances of getting the puck out. So I think he has the best opportunity to make the team out of really any young guy, which is kind of funny to say out loud. It just kind of came to me, but thinking about it, because he has assets that are already NHL ready, even though in my mind he's been a huge disappointment from what I thought he could be when he was drafted, I have to get over that. He's still got the best opportunity, even though he's not on the inside of the track, if that makes sense. I think it makes sense. McLaughlin, maybe, but I don't see that as like a wow, holy crap. And then they would, of course, have to push out the veteran depth. But Patois, I'm going to start saying the name normally, I promise. Kuntar, Harrison, ain't no way. They're either need more seasoning, or although we're very excited about Patois, I refuse to say his name normally. I just can't do it. Although we're very excited about him, he has one more year in the OHL. He's not eligible for the AHL. He would have to make the Boston Bruins out of camp. Being young, undersized, he would have to blow away the coaching staff for them to take a swing like that. And although it's a year for something like that, God, it is so unlikely. There's no freaking way. And if he does make the team, plaster that statement everywhere. Put it in the locker room. Put it in his locker. This random YouTube guy said you don't have it. I didn't say that. I just said you don't have it this year. That's fair, right? So there you have it. That's your lineup. Opening day. And let me ask you something. If this is your lineup, and if they stay healthy through a season, what's the record at the end of the year? Because looking at that, I think you could get a solid 46, 28, and 8. Something like that. I mean, that's, what was that, 92? That's 100 points. That's a decent team. That's a team that makes the playoffs. I think that's reasonable. Now, could I see it going the other way and it's like 35 something? I'm not doing the math. Yeah, it's possible. This year just has a ton of range. But this is what I'm thinking for how we start the season. There's going to be a lot of speculation about that, but I feel pretty good about where we are right now, and we're going to see some crazy shit next summer. Like, crazy stuff. For what it's worth, I do believe DeBrusk will be extended midway through the season, and that is the only contract work for this group of players that we'll see during the year. Everything else will wait till the end of the year. You might see discussions at the end of the year with Marchand increase, and then of course Swayman's got to get his new deal. Grizzlick will likely be gone. Shattenkirk will be gone. James Van Riemsdyk will be gone. Lucic will be gone. Greer will be gone. Next summer is going to be nuts, but this is the team right now, and I feel pretty damn good about it. How about you? Go Bees! Go Bees!